Watch before delete. I'm coming. Now, trembling alien women. The research station Khepri. 9 drifted in silence, far from any busy trade lane. It floated near a dead star, where the light was thin and cold. No one came here unless they had a reason. No one stayed long unless they had to. Inside the station, the lights flickered like tired eyes. The air smelled of metal and old filters. A soft alarm beeped again and again, but it was weak now, like it was losing hope. Dr. Sari Ven pressed her palm to a wall panel, as if her touch could calm the station down. Her skin was pale blue, and her fingers were long and careful. She had spent her life studying strange signals from deep space. She never thought she would become one of them. Behind her, 3 other women waited in a small lab that had become their shelter. Lysa, a young engineer with quick hands and a sharp mind, knelt beside an open floor hatch. Tools were spread around her like tiny weapons. She kept trying to repair a power line that refused to stay alive. Mira, a field biologist, hugged her knees close. Her eyes stayed on the ceiling vents, as if she expected something to drop from them at any second. And Captain Rowe, the station's security officer, stood with a stun pistol in both hands. Her stance was strong, but her breathing was not steady. The gun was meant for emergencies, not nightmares. Another flicker ran through the lights. For half a second, the lab went dim and the air system stuttered. Then everything returned, but weaker than before. Lysa muttered, "Power feed is breaking again. It's like the station is bleeding electricity." Sari tried to keep her voice calm. "How long can you hold it?" Lysa didn't look up. "Hours if I'm lucky, minutes if the next surge hits." Captain Rowe stepped closer to the sealed door. She listened. Nothing but the soft hum of dying machines. Then, very faintly, there was a sound. Not a beep, not a fan. A scrape. Rowe lifted her pistol higher. "Did you hear that?" Mira's eyes widened. "Yes." Sari forced herself to breathe. "From the corridor?" Rowe nodded once. Her face was hard, but fear hid behind it like a shadow behind glass. Something is out there. They already knew that. They had known since the first day the station went quiet. Khepri, Pride. 9 was built to study signals coming from the dead star's dark belt, where broken rock and frozen dust moved like a slow storm. The station had sensors, drones, and a small crew. It was safe, or it was supposed to be. Then the first drone came back. Raw. It returned with deep scratches in its metal shell, as if something had tried to tear it open. The drone's camera showed only seconds of footage, a bright flash of movement, and then darkness. The second drone never returned. Then, 2 days later, the station's main power system began to fail. At first, the crew blamed old parts and bad luck. But then they found the maintenance tunnel near Sector D. The hatch had been forced open from the inside, and the metal was bent in a way no tool could do. After that, people stopped walking alone. After that, the first person disappeared. Now only 4 were left, trapped in a lab that still had some power, with a door that's still sealed, and a station that felt less like a home and more like a cage. Sari stepped toward the main console. The screen was cracked, but it worked. A map of the station showed red warnings in almost every section. "Environmental controls failing," Sari read out loud. "Gravity stable for now. Communications limited." Mira swallowed. "Limited means what?" Sari hesitated. "It means we can send, but we may not have the strength to reach far." Lysa finally looked up. Sweat ran down the side of her face. So we can scream into the dark. Ro's jaw tightened. Then we scream. We don't stay quiet and wait. Another scrape came from the corridor, closer now. The sound was slow and careful, like someone dragging a sharp edge along the outer wall. Mira's hands trembled. She tried to hide them. She failed. Sari watched her and understood. Fear was not shameful. Fear was information. Fear said, "Stay alive." Sari spoke gently. "Mira, check the medical pack again. Make sure filters and oxygen masks are ready." Mira nodded quickly and crawled toward a storage cabinet, eager for a task. Anything that made her feel less helpless. Sari turned to Lysa. "Can you give me a clean channel to broadcast?" Lysa wiped her hands and moved to the console. "I can try, but if the surge hits during the send, the message could break." Sari stared at the blinking red alerts. A broken message is still better than silence. Ro kept her eyes on the door. "Make it fast." Sari sat at the console and opened the emergency transmitter. The station used tight beam communications, meant for private scientific data. For an SOS, it had a wider mode, but it was less strong. The wider mode was like trying to shout with a tired voice across a huge canyon. She typed the code for distress priority. The system asked for details: crew status, station status, threat type. Sari paused over the last one. Threat type. How did you explain something you did not understand? She wrote, unknown life form. Station compromised. Crew trapped. Immediate assistance required. Then she added coordinates and a timestamp. Ro glanced over her shoulder. Add this. If anyone hears this, don't come alone. Sari nodded and typed. Recommend rescue team and containment gear. Lysa leaned closer. Send it now. If we wait, the next power drop may kill the transmitter. Sari's finger hovered over the command. In her mind, she saw empty space, endless and cold. She imagined her message traveling like a small, fragile spark. She imagined it fading before it found anyone. But she also imagined something else. She imagined a ship receiving it. She imagined a crew reading it. She imagined someone saying, "We're going." Hope was dangerous, but it was also fuel. Sari pressed send. The station's transmitter let out a low whine, like a deep breath. Lights dimmed across the lab as power moved into the broadcast. The console screen shook with static. For 3 long seconds, Sari thought it would fail. Then the status bar climbed. 20%. 40. 70. 90. The lab lights flickered hard. The room went almost black. Lysa cursed softly and grabbed her tools. The bar reached 100. A green word appeared. Transmission complete. Mira let out a small sound, half laugh, half sob. Ro did not celebrate. She only whispered, "Now we wait." The scrape outside stopped. The silence that followed felt worse. Ro stepped closer to the door and placed her ear against the cold metal. She could hear her own heartbeat. She could hear the weak hum of the lock system. Then she heard a faint clicking noise, like a creature tapping its claws on a surface. It was not random. It was searching. Lysa spoke in a low voice. "How long until someone hears it?" Sari didn't lie. "If any ship is close, minutes. If not, it could be hours or days." Mira's eyes filled with tears. "Days?" Sari looked at her. "We will do what we can to last." Ro turned from the door. No more running through corridors. We stay here. We ration power. We keep quiet. Lysa shook her head. Quiet won't stop it. Ro didn't deny it. But noise will invite it. Sari stood and walked to the small window in the lab. It was thick and scratched, but it showed space outside. The dead stars field looked like dark dust floating in darker air. Far away, the station's solar wings hung like broken arms. She felt very small. Then, like a sudden thought, her console made a soft sound. A beep. Not the station alarm. A different tone. Sari rushed back. The communications panel flashed, but it was not an incoming message. It was a confirmation log. The system had recorded that the SOS ping had reached a relay buoy. Old, but still active. That meant the message was no longer trapped in local space. It had entered the wider network. It was still a long shot. But it was a shot. Sari showed the screen to the others. It reached the buoy. Mira pressed both hands over her mouth. Her shoulders shook, so someone could hear it. Yes, Sari said. Someone could. Ro nodded once, a small movement, but it meant everything. Good. In a completely different part of the galaxy, the human patrol ship Vigilant moved through open space. It was not large. It was not pretty. But it was strong and built to last. Inside its bridge, calm screens glowed with star maps and sensor data. Crew members spoke in steady voices. This was routine patrol. Boring, safe, and normal, until a young communications officer leaned forward, frowning. Commander Hale, he said, I'm seeing a distress signal. Commander Elias Hale turned in his chair. He had tired eyes, short dark hair, and the kind of face that had seen enough space to respect it. From where? The officer tapped the screen and enlarged the coordinates. Deep edge. Near a dead star. It's old territory. No registered traffic. Hale stood and walked closer. He read the short, broken message. He saw the words, unknown life form, crew trapped. Immediate assistance. He didn't ask if they should ignore it. He didn't ask what the risks were first. He only asked one question. How far? The navigation officer answered carefully. At safe speed, we can reach in 36 hours. If we take the star corridor near the belt, maybe 16. The bridge fell quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. The corridor was unstable. It was avoided for good reasons. Hale stared at the dark coordinates on the screen. Then he looked at his crew. Prep for corridor travel, he said. We're going. The navigation officer blinked. Commander? Hale raised a hand. I heard you. I'm still saying it. The communications officer swallowed. Sir, we don't even know who sent it. Hale's voice stayed firm. We know enough. Someone is trapped. Someone asked for help. He leaned closer to the screen and pressed the ship-to-ship reply button. The signal would not reach the station directly, not yet, but it would travel the network. If it got to them, it would matter. He spoke into the mic, clear and steady. This is Human Patrol Vessel Vigilant. We received your distress call. Hold position if you can. We are on our way. He paused just a fraction, then added the words he wanted them to hear most. I'm coming. Now? The bridge remained silent for a beat. Then the ship changed course. And in the cold darkness near the dead star, 4 frightened survivors did not know it yet, but the universe had answered. The human patrol ship Vigilant moved closer to the edge of known space. The stars ahead looked thinner, like someone had pulled them apart with invisible hands. The corridor that lay before them was not a place marked on most maps. It was a narrow path between heavy gravity fields, broken stardust, and strange light waves that bent sensors and twisted time signals. Commander Elias Hale stood on the bridge with his hands behind his back. He watched the main screen as warning icons slowly appeared along the ship's path. "Status," he said. Navigation Officer Tamsin Reed cleared her throat. "Corridor entrance in 5 minutes. Gravity waves are already touching our outer sensors. Shield levels are stable, but I recommend we reroute power to the forward hull." Hale nodded. "Do it." At the communication station, Jonah Pike checked the open channel again. The screen was quiet. No reply. Just the empty hum of space. "They haven't answered," Jonah said softly. Hale looked over. "They might not be able to. Keep the channel open." Jonah nodded. The Vigilant was not a warship. It was a patrol and rescue vessel. Its hull was thick, its engines strong, and its systems built to work even when half of them failed. The ship had saved miners from collapsing tunnels, traders from broken drives, and even a lost alien family once, drifting in a broken pod. But the corridor ahead was different. The ship's AI, a calm voice named Atlas, spoke through the bridge speakers. "Commander, probability of safe passage through the corridor is 63%. Hale almost smiled. "I'll take it." Reed gave him a look. "You always say that." "Because I always mean it," Hale replied. The stars on the screen began to stretch into thin white lines. The space around the ship looked like glass that had started to melt. "Entering corridor," Reed announced. The Vigilant shook. Not hard. Just enough to let everyone know that space itself was unhappy about their presence. On Khepri 9, the research station, the 4 survivors sat in near darkness. They had turned off everything they could. Only one small light remained in the lab, glowing like a tired eye. Mira held a small scanner in her hands. It showed faint movement in the station's lower levels. "It's still moving," she whispered. Captain Rowe leaned over her shoulder. "Pattern?" Mira shook her head. "No clear pattern. It goes quiet. Then it moves again. Slow. Careful." Lysa had taken apart a wall panel and connected a thin wire to a small battery pack. "I made a backup power feed for the door lock. If the main system fails, this will keep it sealed." Rowe nodded. "Good work." Sari sat near the console watching the communication log. She kept hoping for a reply from the human ship. Even a broken signal would be enough to prove they were still out there. The station creaked. A deep, slow sound ran through the walls like metal breathing. Mira jumped. "That wasn't it, was it?" Rowe listened. "No. That's the station settling. The temperature outside is dropping." Sari frowned. "Dropping? But the Dead Star's field should be stable." Lysa checked her small sensor. "Something's blocking the outer heat flow." Like something big moved past the station's wing. The 4 of them went quiet. Rowe raised her pistol and moved toward the door. Another sound came from the corridor. Not a scrape this time. A soft, low hum. It felt like it came from the walls themselves. "Back," Rowe whispered. "Everyone back." They moved slowly, careful not to make noise. Sari's console suddenly flashed. A new line appeared in the log. Incoming signal, partial. Her breath caught in her throat. Wait. She pressed the receive key. The screen filled with static. A voice tried to form, but the corridor between the stars was breaking the signal apart. This is Vigilant. We are way. The words were broken, but they were real. Mira grabbed Sari's arm. They're coming. Sari nodded, tears burning in her eyes. Yes, they are. Ro allowed herself one slow breath of relief. Then she raised her pistol again. Good. Now we just have to stay alive long enough to see them. On the Vigilant, the corridor pushed back. A wave of strange light rolled over the ship, and every screen on the bridge went dark for half a second. Power dip! Reed called. Atlas spoke calmly. Rerouting systems. Minor damage to outer sensors, no hull breach detected. The ship shook again, harder this time. Jonah gripped the edge of his station. I don't like this. Hale placed a hand on the back of Jonah's chair. I know. But they're out there, and they're waiting. The main screen returned, showing the corridor like a tunnel made of stars and shadows. Far ahead, a faint point of light marked the exit. Reed squinted at her readings. Commander, we have a problem. A gravity knot is forming near the exit. If it grows, it could pull us off course. Hale didn't hesitate. Can we steer through it? Maybe, Reed said, but it will stress the engines. Then stress them, Hale replied. Reed's hands flew across the controls. On Khepri 9, the hum in the walls grew louder. Mira's scanner beeped softly. It's closer. Ro stepped forward, placing herself between the door and the others. If it gets through, you run. Lysa shook her head. Run where? Ro didn't answer. Sari moved to the console again. She opened the communication channel and spoke into the mic, even though she knew the signal would be weak. This is Khepri 9. We received you. We're holding. We're still here. She sent the message and hoped it would find them. Outside the lab door, something pressed against the metal. Not hard, just enough to test it. The door groaned. Ro fired a warning shot. The stun blast hit the door and sent a bright flash through the small window. The pressure on the door pulled back. For a moment, there was silence again. Lysa whispered, It's smart. Ro nodded. So are we. On the Vigilant, alarms began to sound. Engine temperature rising, Atlas reported. Structural stress at 12% and climbing. Reed gritted her teeth. Come on, come on. The point of light ahead grew larger. Hale leaned forward, gripping the edge of the command console. Stay with me, Vigilant. The ship roared as the engines pushed harder than they were ever meant to. The corridor twisted, stars bending and spinning like a storm of glass. Then, all at once, the pressure vanished. The Vigilant burst back into normal space. The bridge went quiet. Reed laughed, breathless. We're through. Jonah checked his screens. I've got a signal. Stronger now. It's them. Hale straightened. Put it on. Sari's voice filled the bridge, weak but clear enough to understand. We're still here. Hale closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he opened them. Lock on their coordinates. Full speed. On Khepri. 9. The station shook as something heavy moved along its outer hull. The door in the lab dented inward. Just a little. Ro took a step back, then another. Mira clutched her scanner to her chest. Sari stared at the console, watching the human signal grow stronger, the number ticking down. Minutes, not hours. Minutes. She turned to the others. They're close. Ro nodded, her face set. Then we hold. The hum outside turned into a low, angry sound. The door bent again. The 4 women stood together in the dim light, backs to each other, facing the dark. And far away, a human ship burned through space as fast as it could, chasing a promise it had already made. The human ship Vigilant came out of the dark like a rising star. Its engines burned bright blue against the black space near the dead star's belt. Small pieces of frozen dust and rock drifted past its hull, glowing for a moment as they touched the ship's heat shields, then fading back into the cold. On the bridge, Commander Elias Hale stood still, his eyes locked on the main screen. There, said Navigation Officer Tamsin Reed. Visual on Khepri 9. The research station looked worse than any report had shown. One of its solar wings hung at an angle, half torn away. The outer hull was marked with long, deep lines like claw marks across metal. Some of the lights were still on, but many sections were dark. Jonah Pike leaned closer to his screen. Life signs? Atlas, the ship's AI, answered. 4 confirmed life forms inside the central lab. Movement detected in multiple other sections. Unknown biological signatures present. Hale nodded. That's our threat. Reed swallowed. We're in weapons range. Hale raised a hand. We don't fire unless we have to. This is a rescue. The Vigilant moved closer, slow and careful, like a large animal approaching something hurt and dangerous at the same time. On Khepri 9, the 4 survivors felt a deep vibration run through the station. Mira looked up. That's not it. Ro listened. The sound was different. Stronger. Steady. No. No. That's a ship. Sari rushed to the console. The communication screen lit up with a clear signal for the first time in days. This is Human Patrol Vessel Vigilant. Hale's voice came through, calm and strong. Khepri. 9. We have you in sight. We're beginning rescue operations. Mira cried out in relief. Lysa slumped against the wall, laughing softly. I knew it. I knew someone would come. Ro closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them again. Stay sharp. The danger's not gone. Sari pressed the reply key. Vigilant, we read you. The threat is inside the station. Unknown life form. It's been testing our door. Understood, Hale replied. Hold position. We're sending a team. Outside the station, the Vigilant launched 2 small craft. They moved fast and smooth, their lights cutting through the dark. On the bridge, Reed watched their paths. Shuttles are in. Docking with the outer ring. Hale turned to Jonah. Keep the channel open with the survivors. Jonah nodded. Already on it. On Khepri 9, the door to the lab creaked again. A long crack appeared in the metal. Ro raised her pistol. It knows something's changed. It can feel the ship. Mira's scanner beeped wildly. It's moving back. Toward the docking ring. Sari's eyes widened. It's going for them. Ro didn't hesitate. We can't let it reach the humans. Lysa stood up. What are you saying? Ro looked at the cracked door. I'm saying we draw it away. Sari shook her head. No, that's too dangerous. Ro met her eyes. Everything here is dangerous. But if that thing meets the rescue team first, they won't know what they're facing. Mira's voice trembled. You can't go alone. Ro gave a small, brave smile. I'm not alone. I have you. And I have a plan. She walked to a wall panel and pulled it open, exposing wires and a small power cell. We overload this, she said. The door unlocks. The lights in the corridor flare. Noise, heat, movement. It will come to us. Lysa swallowed. And then? Ro lifted her pistol. Then we run. On the Vigilance shuttle, Lieutenant Mara Cole led a small team of Marines through the airlock. Their suits were light but strong, built for rescue and protection, not heavy war. Each carried a stun rifle and a small shield device. Remember, Mara said, we don't know what we're facing. Stick together. Protect the survivors first. They moved into the station's dark corridor. Back in the lab, Ro took a deep breath. Ready? No one said yes, but no one said no. Ro pulled the power cell free and slammed it back in. The lab door burst open with a loud bang. Lights in the corridor flared to life, bright and harsh. A sound rose from the station. A low, angry hum that turned into a sharp, echoing cry. Mira screamed. Ro shouted, Now! Run! They ran into the corridor, their footsteps loud in the sudden light. Ahead of them, the hallway twisted and bent. The station's walls seemed closer now, tighter, like the place itself was holding its breath. Behind them, something moved. Not fast, but steady. Heavy. Sari glanced back and saw it for the first time. It was tall and wide, its body covered in dark, smooth plates that reflected the light. Long limbs touched the walls and floor at the same time, helping it move in a strange, careful way. Its head was low, its eyes small and bright. It was not a monster. It was a hunter. Left, Ro shouted. They turned into a side passage just as a deep sound shook the air behind them. On the shuttle, Mara's team heard it too. That's not normal station noise, one Marine said. Mara raised her hand. Move faster. The two groups ran toward each other from different ends of the station. Mira tripped, but Lysa grabbed her arm and pulled her up. Don't stop! Lysa yelled. The creature followed, its heavy steps slow but unstoppable. Sari's lungs burned. Her vision blurred, but she kept going. Then, ahead, she saw a light. A white-blue glow. Human suit lights. Over here! Mara's voice called. Ro fired her pistol behind them. The stun blast hit the floor near the creature, sending a wave of energy through the metal. The creature stopped for half a second. That was enough. The 4 survivors ran into the arms of the human rescue team. Mara pushed them behind her squad. Shields up! The Marines formed a line, their shield devices creating a soft, glowing wall in front of them. The creature stepped into the light. It paused. Its small eyes reflected the blue glow of the shields. Mara raised her rifle. Easy! Easy! The creature moved forward. The Marines fired together. The stun energy hit the creature's plates and spread across its body in bright lines. It cried out a loud, sharp sound that filled the corridor and fell back. It did not die. It did not break, but it stopped. Atlas's voice came through Mara's helmet. Lifeform is stunned. Neural activity slowed. Mara nodded. Containment team, move. Small drone units flew forward, projecting a light cage around the creature. It tried to move, but the field held. Mira sank to the floor, shaking. Is it over? Mara helped her up. For now. Let's get you out of here. On the Vigilance bridge, Hale watched the feed from the Marines' helmets. Good work, he said quietly. The survivors were guided into the shuttle. As the doors closed, Sari looked back at the dark station one last time. It's over, Lysa whispered. Sari shook her head gently. It's not the end. It's a beginning. The shuttle detached and flew back to the Vigilant. Inside the human ship, warm lights and steady air greeted them. Crew members brought blankets, water, and medical scanners. Mira held a cup in both hands, staring at the floor. You really came? Hale stepped forward. He knelt so he was at eye level with her. We said we would. Rose stood tall, though her hand still shook. Thank you, Commander. Hale nodded. You held the line. We just finished the job. Outside the ship's windows, Khepri, 9 drifted in silence. The dead star's dust moved slowly around it, like a quiet sea. Hale turned back to his bridge. Set course away from the belt. Reed smiled. Aye, Commander. As the Vigilant moved back into the open stars, the survivors sat together, safe for the first time in days. They did not cheer. They did not shout. They simply breathed. And in the wide galaxy, another story began to spread, about a human ship that came when the dark was close, and about a promise that had not been forgotten. The human ship Vigilant moved away from the dead star's belt, leaving the broken research station behind. The stars ahead looked brighter now, warmer, like small lights placed along the long road. Inside the ship, the air felt different. It was steady, safe. The soft hum of engines replaced the cold silence of Khepri. 9. Doctor? Sari Ven sat in the medical bay, wrapped in a light blanket. A small scanner hovered near her shoulder, glowing green as it checked her health. Her body was tired, but her mind was wide awake. Across from her, Mira held a cup of warm drink in both hands. She stared into it like she was afraid it might disappear. Lysa leaned against a wall, talking quietly with one of the human engineers. She pointed at a screen, already asking questions about the Vigilance power systems, her fear slowly turning back into curiosity. Captain Rose stood near the doorway, arms crossed, watching everything. She did not relax easily, but her shoulders were lower now than they had been in days. Commander Elias Hale walked into the bay. He did not wear armor. He did not look like a hero. He just looked like a tired person who was glad to see others alive. How are you all feeling? He asked. Mira looked up first. Like I'm still dreaming. Hale smiled softly. That's normal. Sari stood and bowed her head slightly, a sign of respect from her culture. You came for us when you didn't have to. Hale shook his head. We always have to. Rowe studied him. Is that a rule or a belief? Hale thought for a moment. Both. The ship's AI, Atlas, spoke gently through the speakers. Commander, we are approaching the edge of safe space. Medical and supply stations are ready for guest transfer. Hale nodded. Thank you, Atlas. Mira blinked. Guest? Hale looked at her. You're not cargo. You're not a problem. You're guests. Mira smiled, small, but real. The Vigilant soon docked at a nearby neutral station called Crossway Port. It was a large place, built by many species together. Its halls were wide, its lights warm, and its air filled with soft sounds of voices from all across the galaxy. As the 4 survivors stepped off the Vigilant, people stopped and stared. Not because of how they looked, but because of how they arrived. Human Marines walked beside them, not as guards, but as escorts. Their posture was not hard. It was protective. Whispers moved through the crowd. That's them. They came from the dead star belt. I heard a human ship went through the storm corridor for them. News traveled fast in space. Sari felt a strange mix of pride and fear. She had never wanted to be part of a story. She only wanted to study the stars. Now she was part of something bigger. At the port's central hall, a group of officials waited. They wore badges from different worlds and spoke in many languages. A tall figure stepped forward. His skin was dark green, his eyes bright gold. "I am Speaker Taylor of the Council," he said. "We welcome you to Crossway Port. We have heard what happened at Khepri." 9. Rose straightened. "Then you know our station is lost." Taller nodded slowly. "Yes, but your lives were not. That matters more." He turned to Hale. "And you, Commander. You took a great risk." Hale did not deny it. "Yes." "Why?" Taller asked. Hale looked at the 4 survivors, then at the people watching, then back at Taller. "Because they asked for help," he said. "And because we could go." Taller studied him for a long moment, then he bowed his head slightly, copying Sari's earlier gesture. "Your answer will be remembered." The survivors were given rooms at the port, clean rooms. Warm beds, real food. That night, Mira slept for 10 full hours without dreaming of dark corridors or bending doors. Lysa stayed up late, talking with engineers from 3 different species, drawing new ideas on a shared screen. Ro walked the long halls, getting used to open space again, her hand no longer reaching for a weapon. Sari sat by a wide window and looked at the stars. She thought about the signal she had sent, about how small it had felt, about how far it had traveled. The next day, the council invited Sari and Hale to speak. The chamber was large and round, with seats rising like steps around a central floor. Screens floated in the air, showing faces from distant worlds who could not be there in person. Sari stood beside Hale, her hands shaking just a little. Taller raised his voice. "We are here to discuss the event at Khepri, 9. An unknown life form, a lost station, and a human ship that crossed a forbidden path. One of the screens lit up with the face of a gray-skinned elder. We have lost stations before. We have lost people. Why is this different?" Sari took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Because this time," she said. "Someone came?" The chamber went quiet. "We sent a signal," Sari continued. "We did not know who would hear it. We did not know if anyone would answer. But they did." She looked at Hale. "They did not ask what we could offer in return. They did not ask if it was safe. They only asked how far away we were." Another screen lit up, showing a sharp-eyed figure. "The corridor they used is dangerous. Many ships have been lost there." Hale nodded. "Yes. Then why go?" the figure asked again. Hale gave the same answer. "Because they were there." Murmurs filled the chamber. Taller raised a hand for silence. "The council proposes a change." Everyone leaned forward. "We propose the creation of a rescue network," Taller said. "A shared system of signals, ships, and crews from many species." When a call goes out, it will not travel alone. It will be carried by all of us. Sari felt her eyes fill with tears. Ro clenched her fists, proud. Lysa whispered, "We started something." Hale did not smile. He only nodded, serious. "Good." Days passed. The Vigilant stayed at Crossway Port for repairs and rest. Its hull bore marks from the corridor storm, but its engines were strong, and its crew ready to fly again. Mira spent time in the port's gardens, touching real plants for the first time since leaving her homeworld. Lysa was offered a place in a shared research group. She accepted without hesitation. Ro trained with port security, sharing tactics and learning new ones. Sari returned to her work, but her studies changed. She no longer only listened to the stars. She listened for voices. One evening, Hale stood on the Vigilance bridge, looking out at the port lights. Jonah Pike walked up beside him. "We're getting messages." Hale turned. "What kind?" "From ships. From stations. From places far out. They're testing the new network. They're checking to see if someone will answer." Hale took a slow breath. "And are we?" Jonah smiled. "Every time." Far away, on a small mining outpost near a cold blue moon, a worker hit the distress button. The signal rose into the dark. It did not travel alone. It joined a growing web of light, carried by many ships, many crews, many worlds. On Crossway Port, Sari felt her console beep. She looked at the screen and saw the network active, alive. She thought of the words Hale had spoken. "I'm coming." Now, she understood them differently now. They were not just a promise from one ship. They were a promise from many. The Vigilance engines powered up. The ship slowly pulled away from the port, stars opening in front of it like a wide door. On the bridge, Hale stood tall. "Next call?" he asked. Atlas answered, "Coordinates received. Distance, far. Conditions, unknown." Hale smiled, just a little. Set course. As the ship moved into the light of open space, the galaxy felt less empty, not because it was safer, but because no one faced it alone anymore.